Every knee shall bow, and every tongue confess that Jesus Christ is Lord forever. Every knee shall bow, and every tongue confess that Jesus Christ is Lord forever. He's the King of kings, and He's the Lord of lords. For Jesus Christ is Lord forever. He's the King of kings, and He's the Lord of lords. Jesus Christ is Lord forever. Can't stop praising His name, I just can't stop praising His name, I just can't stop praising the name of Jesus. Can't stop praising His name, I just can't stop praising His name, I just can't stop praising the name of Jesus. For every knee shall bow, and every tongue confess that Jesus Christ is Lord forever. Yes, every knee shall bow, and every tongue confess that Jesus Christ is Lord forever. I can't stop praising His name, I just can't stop praising His name, I just can't stop praising the name of Jesus. No, 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 I can't stop praising His name, I just can't stop praising His name, I just can't stop praising the name of Jesus. He's the King of kings, and He's the Lord of lords. Jesus Christ is Lord forever. He's the King of kings, and He's the Lord of lords. Jesus Christ is Lord forever. I can't stop praising His name, I just can't stop praising His name, I just can't stop praising the name of Jesus. No, 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 I can't stop praising His name, I just can't stop praising His name, I just can't stop praising the name of Jesus. I can't stop praising His name, I just can't stop praising His name, I just can't stop praising the name of Jesus. No, 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 I can't stop praising His name, I just can't stop praising His name, I just can't stop praising the name of Jesus. I can't stop. Come on, give Jesus Christ a shout of praise, amen.
This past year, I read a book with my daughter called Little House in the Big Woods. You may be familiar with it. It's the first book written by Laura Ingalls Wilder, and it began the popular Little House on the Prairie series. I don't recall reading it before, and as I read it to my 5-year-old, I think I enjoyed it even more than she did. Something about the way the family lived. It intrigued me. I love my internet tremendously, but the simplicity and closeness this family shared sounded really wonderful to me. The idea of working together for each other drew me into their little world. Many times as I read the pages aloud, I yearned for such a time as the ones described. I looked around yesterday I wonder if we wouldn't be better taking a step back in time where we could focus more on important matters and less on trivial ones. I see the things around me that cause so much unneeded stress, and I truly believe that the principalities and powers of darkness wish to destroy what God has created. God favors families. He favors love, time together, and focus on cultivating those relationships. What I see today is in direct opposition of that, yet those things have developed slowly over time, so much so that we don't even notice them deteriorating the fabric of family. Our preteens and teenagers are so absorbed in their Snapchat and Instagram that they can't even come up for air. Not that we notice. We are buried ourselves in Facebook newsfeed or our hottest new game app. The normalcy of public school education with its ever-increasing curriculum demands are swallowed like good medicine. The school year gets longer, testing increases, and hours of homework creep into the family time. So children that already spend 8 to 9 hours away from home are spending their evening hours doing more projects, reports, and extra credit assignments. Mom and dad are too exhausted to help much. They're tired because they're putting in more hours. Dual working parents are the majority. And while the costs of living have definitely increased over time, I wonder how much of our necessities are truly that. We work more to be able to buy more, yet we hardly have time to enjoy all our purchases. We save all year long for a week-long vacation that leaves us exhausted and in need of a day off from our days off. A lot of our hard-earned money is spent on activities. So many activities. We spend more time driving to activities, purchasing gear, costumes, and accessories for our activities, or working on our days off to raise funds for our activities. Activities where we watch other people teach, coach, and mentor our children. Is this the time together we are craving? Makes you think. Time doesn't cost a dime. If you had to sit down and add up how much quality time you spend alone with your spouse, what would it be? What about your children? And not time doing and going, just time. Is it less time that you spend? Is it less time than you spend on your weekly commute to work? It makes you wonder if divorce is more prominent today because it's become socially more acceptable. Or is it because we're spending less time enjoying the company of our spouse? Would children get in less trouble if they had a present parent available to guide them? They say it takes a village to raise a child, but I'm wondering if we've taken that too far. Now we just want the village to take care of them. And then when our children fall down and fail, we can have teachers, coaches, and the church to blame for their demise. This is hard stuff to think about. It's taking everything we've called normal over the past few decades or more and realizing that it's actually destroying the family unit. Our kids are playing ball 3 to 5 times a week until 10 p.m., and the parents are working 60 hours a week to keep designer duds on the kiddos lest they get bullied for wearing Walmart brand clothing. Everyone has a TV in their room, a cell phone in their pocket, and a brand new car in the driveway, yet none of that will go to heaven with us. We're working very hard providing material possessions for our children, when in all reality, we should be on our knees with them, leading them to a closer walk with Jesus. Eternal life is what we should want for our kids, not the best education money can buy. And while I'm all for giving them a bright future, I don't want to give them the world if it forfeits their soul. When my grown children look back on life, I want them to have memories of time well spent rather than spending all the time. I got to work on this. I don't have it all figured out either, but I'd like to think my eyes are open enough to see that Satan wishes to destroy us. Satan wants us tired, worn thin, and stressed. He wants us in debt up to our eyeballs and our health failing because we can't sleep enough, eat right, or handle our stress effectively. He wants husbands and wives fighting over finances, disrespectful teens who learned how to treat their parents based off of Nickelodeon sitcoms, and thousands of young children sexually abused by the adults we are so quick to put our trust in. He wants us busy, but not productive. He wants our plates full, but our tank empty. He wants us looking to society for what's best for our family, not God's lamp, not God's word as a lamp to our feet. He wants the family unit ripped apart, and many times I look around and see us letting him. We're not even trying to take a stand. But I would like to believe that it's not too late. We can still fight to save our families. Perhaps it all comes to stepping out in wisdom, courage, and truth for our family. In a world that's so busy keeping up with the Kardashians, maybe it's time to be a little house on the prairie. What do you think? And she put a little note here. This isn't meant to offend anyone. It's just meant to trigger thinking about it. I'm certainly a work in progress. And we all are. But let me tell you, our kids, their souls are more important than anything else they could ever do on this side of heaven. We've got to get busy. We've got to claim or even take back what the devil has taken, because there are a lot of families that have been destroyed. When you look at the suicide rate, you know, every time Satan gets another family through, or a family member through suicide, I can just see him throwing his head back and laughing, because he's got that one. We've got to get busy doing what we can to save the children that we come in contact with. You know, they might be neighborhood kids. They might be your brothers or your sister's kids. But we all know kids other than just our own who aren't going to church. So I am taking this as a special invitation to encourage you to invite a child, a parent, a family member, somebody who doesn't currently go to church for Back to Church Sunday. I said it last week and I'm going to say it again today. We all know people who don't go to church anymore. They just don't. They sleep in on Sundays. They don't have time for God. They don't have time to go to church. Well, they have time for what they want to have time for. They will get up early in the morning to go somewhere else. That's right. It is a spiritual battle, and we need to get on our knees and start fighting for our nation and the families that we say we love.
Before I spoke a word, you were singing over me. You have been so, so good to me. Before I took a breath, you breathed your life in me. Yeah. no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, no lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, no lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, no lie you won't tear down, coming after me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down. If I stay alive, I'll believe tonight, and I couldn't earn it, and I don't deserve it. Still, you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down. If I stay alive, I believe tonight, and I couldn't earn it, and I don't deserve it. Still, you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. And I couldn't earn it, and I don't deserve it. Still, you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. And I couldn't earn it, and I don't deserve it. Still, you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. And say, and I couldn't earn it, and I don't deserve it, but still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Come on, give a shout out unto Him. We worship your name, Lord. life. You are love. You bring light to the darkness. You give hope. You restore every heart that is broken. Great are you, Lord. You give life. You are love. You bring light to the darkness. You give hope. You restore every heart that is broken. Great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. Give life. You give life. You are love. You bring light to the darkness. You give hope. You restore every heart that is broken. Great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. Say, and all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry. These bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. And all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry. These bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. And all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry. These bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. Great are you, Lord. Great are you, Lord. Great are you, Come on, tell the Lord how great He is. Lift up your hands. And as we do this series, as we're going through it,
understand, as that video points out, there's many, many different types of prayer. And as we are talking about prayers answered, I sort of give you that at the beginning when I talk about that. But again, as a little bit of a synopsis, a background of what we've been doing, we first discussed what is prayer. And I said this about prayer. Prayer is a relationship where we humbly communicate, worship, and sincerely seek God's face, knowing that He hears us, loves us, and will respond, though not always in the manner we may expect or desire. And then we looked at the purpose of prayer. And I said prayer is a privilege that God gives us where He lets us participate in His will being accomplished on this earth. And I said this every single time I made that statement. This is His story. It's about Him. It's not about us. It's about Him. And then we looked at why pray. Prayer is a two-way conversation with God. Why pray? The simplest answer is this. Jesus did. And again, if Jesus prayed, we should pray too. And then we took the word pray and we broke it down. We used it as an acronym for these words here. For praise, repent, ask, and yield. And these show us a simple framework for prayer that Jesus gave us so we can keep our prayer lives fresh and growing. But the best lesson of all can be summed up in the self-slogan of Nike, where they just say what? Just do it. So it was just pray. But when we looked at praise, the letter P, we say God is so awesome, He deserves our praise. God is praised for who He is and all that He does. Then we looked at R, repent. Repentance results in God's forgiveness. And we looked at that in the Lord's Prayer where it says, forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. We talked about that, how they go hand in hand. Then we did A, ask. God wants to hear our heart's desire. Understand it. God wants to hear our heart's desire. Jesus, in this prayer, gives us the right to say, give us this day our daily bread. That we can go before God what? Every day. If we need to, several times a day. But we can go before Him every day. And then we have to move at why? Yield. I simply said this about that. Yield means to let God be God. Sometimes that's one of the hardest things to do, but that's the greatest thing to do. Is just let God be God. But to talk about prayer or even study prayer is no substitute for actually praying. It's like, talking about witnessing and doing all stuff. Without actually witnessing, it doesn't do you any good. So doing also without praying, it doesn't do as much good. And Jesus did not use the expression, if you pray, but when you pray. So He expected us to do what? To pray. And this is where we've taken the basis of the entire series off of this verse right here. In Luke chapter 11, verses 1 and 2, we read this. Once Jesus was in a certain place praying. What was He doing? Again, what was He doing?
Praying.
He was praying. Jesus was praying. As He finished, one of His disciples came to Him and said, Lord, teach us to pray just as John taught his disciples. And Jesus said, this is how you should pray. He didn't say this is what you should pray, but this is how you should pray. He's given them a model prayer. But again, let's look at this prayer here. We're going to say it together to start off our message this morning. We've been doing this every week, and we're going to do it again today. Again, we're not doing this just out of routine, but I want you to, hopefully it draws you back to when we started talking about pray, praise, repent, ask, and yield. But let's go. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And do not lead us into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. For yours is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. I'm here to tell you there's nothing wrong with praying that prayer, but it's not about just praying that prayer. It's understanding what Jesus gave us that prayer for. The model that He gave us, and that's why we went over all this stuff. And as we were dealing with this, I said, now we need to see some examples of God answering prayer. And I said this over the last several weeks. I said, if you're praying, it's probably because you want something to change. Am I right? When you pray for blessing, you want to be blessed afterwards. When you pray for protection, you want to feel safe afterwards. When you pray for deliverance, you want your problems to go away as soon as possible. But if change doesn't happen, or if change doesn't happen like you think it should, you might try to conclude that praying doesn't really work. And I do believe that's why God has put so many examples of answered prayer in His Word. When people literally go through messes in their life, they call out to God for it to intervene And he did. So we're going to go through this over these even a couple more weeks to come. But as we look at these incredible stories of answered prayer, I want you to notice two important aspects. Number one, the attitude and motives of the person who prayed. And then number two, the power by which God answered. And today's another great one. And the reason why I'm telling you all this is because these stories could change the way you pray and change how your prayers get answered. In other words, when we do stuff scripturally, when we do stuff biblically, we can expect biblical results. We can expect God to answer because we're following the examples that are already set out there. Okay? So we've been looking at prayer answered. And the first person we looked at was a woman named Hannah. And there were three things we learned from Hannah, which is throughout even all these messages, we need to understand this falls in line. As we talk about the person we're going to talk about today, what we learn about her prayer falls in line with the prayer that's prayed today. And it was this. Number one, pray with all your heart. Number two, pray for the right reason. Understanding it's about God, not about us. It's really not about our situation. It's about God's glory being declared in that situation. And then number three, be patient. And realize that God may take a while to answer your prayer. And then the next person, the person we looked at last week, was a guy named Jehoshaphat. And I encourage you to do this. It said there's two things we learned about Jehoshaphat. Even though all the three things about Hannah were involved in what Jehoshaphat did, I want you to do this also. Trust God to answer your prayer. And then trust God to fight your battles. And He will do that. And we talked about how that came to fruition in the life of Jehoshaphat. Well, today we're going to talk about a guy by the name of Hezekiah. Pastor Houston, something. I mean, Hannah's a pretty normal name, but Jehoshaphat? Did he call him after the fat? You know, very hot and tempting. Fat at the end. No, that's this one. All right. And then we got a guy named Hezekiah. I will say, Hezekiah is one of my favorite Bible characters. I love the story of Hezekiah. I love everything that goes around this. And there's a reason for that, and I'll tell you that reason here. It says Hezekiah was one of two of all the kings of Judah and Israel that it is said, where God said about him, that he pursued God with all his heart like David did. See, every king that ever ruled after David, either of the United Kingdom, which had just been Solomon, then after that the king of the Bible, had the king of Israel and the king of Judah. Every king after that was compared to David. Every king after David ruled was compared to him. And if you were considered to be an exceptional king, God had said about you that they followed me as their David father followed me. The father David followed me. And Hezekiah is only one of two kings out of probably 40-some kings that this is actually said about. The other king that's said about is a guy named Josiah, which we may deal with him later on. But Hezekiah was a man, like I said, where the Bible says that he followed God with all his heart as David did. And of course that speaks what, you know, my name happens to be David, so I'm a little biased towards David anyway. And David's one of my favorite Bible characters. Of course, you know, only a boy named David, only a little sling. Only a boy named David, but he could play and sing. Only a boy named David, only a little brook. Only a boy named David, and 5 little stones he took, and 1 little stone went into a sling went round and round. And how many remember the little chorus? All right. I'm dating myself here singing that because everybody was going, what? All right. From Sunday school. But Hezekiah, like I said, when we look at this, because remember, when we looked at Jehoshaphat last week, I told you that, I said, what kind of man is Jehoshaphat? And I shared with you where the Bible said about him, he was a man, what? That God was with. He was a man that God was with. So now, you can imagine, with the statement being made that Hezekiah followed God with all of his heart as David did, you can understand that God was definitely with Hezekiah. God's favor was definitely upon Hezekiah. But sometimes, even though that's the case, in our lives, we may face some seemingly overwhelming problems. And this is what Hezekiah found himself in. We're going to get there in just a second. Hezekiah is a great model. His prayer in him is a great model of how to deal with overwhelming circumstances. And when he was faced with this, I want you to understand something. Hezekiah did not despair. He did not panic. He did not give up. He turned to God in prayer. And that's the thing I'm going to sort of emphasize to you this morning as we get to the end, to really focus on that. Like I said, as I said about Jehoshaphat, we say about Hezekiah, in spite of the fact that Hezekiah followed the Lord, he faced battles. He faced troubles. He faced difficulties. So remember, just because you're facing battles in your life at this moment does not mean you have done something wrong. It could be, but it doesn't necessarily mean that. Sometimes you face battles not because you're doing something wrong, but because you're doing what? Something right. But this account of Hezekiah's prayer and God's deliverance is recorded 3 times in the Old Testament. In 2 Kings, in Isaiah, and in 2 Chronicles. And also further, the events of this period are collaborated by Babylonian sources. So they can't say this is just a little fairy tale. World history bears out what we're going to be talking about today. But why did Hezekiah pray? Like I said, Hezekiah found himself in an overwhelming problem. See, he received a threatening letter and was faced with a seemingly overwhelming problem. So what was the letter, and what did the letter say? In 2 Chronicles chapter 32, verses 9 through 15, this is what we read. While King Sennacherib of Assyria was still besieging the town of Lachish, he sent his officers to Jerusalem with this message for Hezekiah and to all the people in the city. This is what King Sennacherib of Assyria says. What are you trusting in that makes you think you can survive my siege of Jerusalem? Hezekiah has said, the Lord your God will rescue you from the king of Assyria. Surely Hezekiah is misleading you, sentencing you to death by famine and thirst. Don't you realize that Hezekiah is the very person who destroyed all the Lord's shrines and altars? He commanded Judah and Jerusalem to worship only at the altar at the temple and to offer sacrifices on it alone. Surely you must realize what I and the other kings of Assyria before me have done to all the people of the earth. Were the gods of these nations able to rescue their people from my power? Which of their gods was able to rescue its people from the destructive power of my predecessors? What makes you think your God can rescue you from me? Don't let Hezekiah deceive you. Don't let him fool you like this. I say it again. No God of any nation or kingdom has ever been able to rescue his people from me or my ancestors. How much less will your God rescue you from my power? Now let me sort of explain what's going on. Assyria is recognized probably to be the true first global known empire of the time. They were one of the first ones to truly start to really make all monies sort of be the same and start to institute a universal language, which was Arabic at this time. And they were the ones who really started to do this stuff. So Assyria was a very, very vast empire, strong empire. In fact, is every single thing. If you go to other readings, you go to like the readings in 2 Kings, you go to the readings of Isaiah, you can sit there and read, and they'll give you the names of the nations that they destroyed. I mean, Assyria was a very, very powerful enemy. And if you understand, it says here that while King Sennacherib was at Lachish. Now Lachish is a town in Israel. It was a stronghold. It was a town that protected the southern border of Israel. It was a heavily fortified city. With I think it had dual walls around it, high walls. It was up on a hill, but it was there to protect from any type of invaders that would invade from the south. And if I'm not mistaken, Sennacherib was just got done fighting Egypt and handed them a big licking and beat up on them pretty bad. And now he's getting ready to head back to his capital, which is in Nineveh, which would take him past the area of Israel. So I guess on his way back, he figured, well, let me go ahead and collect some more loot while I'm heading back. So he's now attacking the stronghold that's supposed to protect Israel's southern border. And I will tell you, Sennacherib decimates Lachish. He builds an earthen ramp up there and actually allows his siege things and his army to actually literally just walk right into the city and take it over and overthrow the stronghold. So he's now roughly about 40 miles away from Jerusalem. And he sends this message to Jerusalem. Like I said, and up to this point, Assyria has never lost a battle. They are a war machine. They are the strongest war machine there is. In fact, they are now what's called the Iron Age. And because of their weapons and the way they designed them, that made them more superior than any nation it came against. And literally, they just literally beat the heebie-jeebies out of everybody they faced. And now this war machine is getting ready to come to Jerusalem. This vast army is coming. And remember, we were saying, okay, Pastor, you told us about Jehoshaphat last week, and there was 3 kings against, but you understand, they weren't Assyria. Assyria would have took on those other 3 kingdoms and beat the heebie-jeebies out of them with no problem. And Assyria was now set its sights on Jerusalem. See, and like I said, and I have this down here, I wrote this in there, it says, sometimes our enemy may have an impressive track record. Assyria, the kingdom of Syria, the empire of Syria, had a very, very impressive track record. Nobody was able to stop them. Absolutely no one. And now all of a sudden, Sennacherib receives word that this little king in Judah, in the city of Jerusalem, is now saying, you know what? We're not going to honor this guy. We're going to resist him. We're going to revolt against what he wants to do. And we're going to fight against him. And literally what Sennacherib is doing, he's laughing. Yeah, right. So he sends a message to the city of Jerusalem. In fact, he sends this messenger out there. They begin to speak it in Hebrew. And originally the leaders of Jerusalem said, why don't you just talk to us in Arabic because we understand it? They said, no, we're going to tell it to the people standing on the wall. The people are going to die because of what your king is deciding to do. So this is part of this letter and part of this thing that we read. You can read more about it, like I said, some of the other things. But Hezekiah receives this letter, and Sennacherib, he is just, he's literally belittling this. And of course, if you've been serving God any amount of time, once you begin to read this letter, you begin to sit there and think, you know what, this guy is asking for problems. It's like I said, sometimes our enemy may have an impressive track record, but that means absolutely nothing to God. The enemy, cancer may have a great track record. But that doesn't mean anything to the one who is the almighty healer. A lot of different things going on in society may have a great track record, but that means nothing to the God of the universe. It means absolutely nothing to him. So Hezekiah, he receives this letter. What does he do about it? What does he do with it? And all this, just listen to how he responds. In 2 Kings chapter 19, verses 14 through 19, we read this. It says, after Hezekiah received a letter from the messengers and read it, he went up to the Lord's temple and spread it out before the Lord. And Hezekiah prayed this prayer. What's the first thing we understand? Hezekiah did what?
Prayed.
He prayed. He prayed this prayer before the Lord. O Lord, God of Israel, you are enthroned between the mighty cherubim. You alone are God of all the kingdoms of the earth. You alone created the heavens and the earth. Bend down, O Lord, and listen. Open your eyes, O Lord, and see. Listen to Sennacherib's words of defiance against the living God. Now, I just want to stop so you notice, he's not saying that Sennacherib's defying me. Who's he saying Sennacherib's defying?
God.
The Lord. See, again, pray with all your heart. This is what Hezekiah is doing. He's praying with all his heart. Pray for the right reason. Oh, who is he praying to? He's praying to God. He's making it about God. Because he says, bend down, O Lord, and listen. Open your eyes, O Lord, and see. Listen to Sennacherib's words of defiance against the living God. In other words, against you. But this is what he says. He says, it is true, Lord, that the kings of Assyria have destroyed all these nations, and they have thrown the gods of these nations into the fire and burnt them. But of course the Assyrians could destroy them. They were not gods at all, only idols of wood and stone shaped by human hands. Now, O Lord our God, rescue us from his power. Then all the kingdoms of the earth will know that you alone, O Lord, are God. See, Hezekiah didn't get there. He didn't have to say, well, Lord, pull our keister out of the fire. Come do it for our sake. But this entire, if you notice, this entire prayer was to do what? Was to stir God up, to have God to do it, to defend his name. To defend who he was. Because Hezekiah took this whole thing and said, don't you understand? Because Sennacherib said, you heard me, it says, who is your God to deliver me from this? So Hezekiah, he says, Lord, you heard what he's saying. But again, Hezekiah's intercession begins by consciously recognizing who God is. When we intercede, we are speaking to the one who alone is God over all the kingdoms of the earth. Understand it. When you go before God, you're speaking to the one who is God, who is ruler over all the kingdoms of the earth. Not only of the earth, but of the entire universe. God has the power to resolve these seemingly overwhelming problems. There's nothing beyond his power. See, Hezekiah's prayer was for God's honor and glory. Then all the kingdoms of the earth will know that you alone, O Lord, are God. The whole thing was he wanted God, yes, he wanted Jerusalem to be delivered. But in that, he understood that by God receiving the glory, by God receiving the glory in all this, that Jerusalem would be delivered. See, many times if we would just simply get to a place instead of quit worrying about ourselves and saying, God, how can your name be glorified? How can you be shown forth in my life? By us allowing him to declare his name, by glorifying his name, then all of a sudden the deliverance comes along with that. See, Hezekiah understood it. By God taking a stand for his name, but by defending his name, all of a sudden that would mean that the defense of Jerusalem would take place. And the deliverance of Jerusalem would take place. The same thing it is with us. When we've got to get our eyes off of ourselves and truly focus our eyes on God and start to say, God, we want you involved to declare your name. See, but you really can't do that unless you're truly praying with all your heart and praying for the right reason. You see how this beginning all this begins to overlap and intertwine, and how all these things we're talking about begin to come together in these. See, Jesus taught us to start our prayers. What did he say? Hallowed be your name. Let your kingdom come. Let your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Tell God, God to God, declare your name. Keep your name holy. Defend your name, O God. Let your name be made known. Let your power be made known. Because again, it's all about God receiving the glory. And again, I love the expression where it says, and he spread it out before the Lord. See, even though God knows all things, Hezekiah wanted to make sure that God really knew about it. So he took the message. He takes it to the temple where the presence of God is known to be. Because this is still during that time that if you were the wrong person and you walked behind that curtain that was hanging up, you weren't walking back down. You'd be struck dead. Especially if you were a Jew. So he takes it, he lays it for the Lord. Now he says, Lord, you've heard it, now I want you to see it. He spreads it out before the Lord. Hezekiah spoke to God about the problem. And the prophet Isaiah sends a message to Hezekiah saying that God heard his prayer. And listen to what Isaiah tells Hezekiah. In 2 Kings 19, verses 20 through 28, you read this, and says, Then Isaiah son of Amoz sent this message to Hezekiah. This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. I have heard your prayer about King Sennacherib of Assyria. And the Lord has spoken this word against him. The virgin daughter of Zion despises you and laughs at you. The daughter of Jerusalem shakes her head in derision as you flee. Whom have you been defying and ridiculing? Against whom have you raised your voice? And whom did you look at whom did you look with such haughty eyes? It was the Holy One of Israel. By your messengers you have defied the Lord. You have said, with my chariots I have conquered the highest heavens. Yes, mountains. Yes, the remotest peaks of Lebanon. I have cut down its tallest cedars and its finest cypress trees. I have reached its farthest corners and explored its deepest forests. I have dug wells in many foreign lands and refreshed myself with their water. With the sole of my foot I stopped up all the rivers of Egypt. You notice when God is saying this back, He's saying, Sennacherib, you're using what a lot? I and me. He says, you're saying all this stuff. But now listen to what he says. But have you not heard? I decided this long ago. Long ago I planned it, and now I'm making it happen. I planned for you to crush fortified cities into heaps of rubble. That is why their people have such little power and are so frightened and confused. They are as weak as grass, as easily trampled as tender green shoots. They are like green grass sprouting on a housetop, scorched before it can grow lush and tall. But I know you well, where you stay and when you come and go. I know the way you have raged against me. And because of your raging against me and your arrogance, which I have heard for myself, I will put my hook in your nose and my bit in your mouth, and I will make you return by the same road on which you came. I'm going to stop there for a second. That's not the end of his reply. But I'm here to tell you, there's many times the enemy's going to rear his head. He's going to speak out in arrogance. And people in this world, they speak out in arrogance. They may sit there and say that God is dead and this and that. I'm here to tell you, they may say this stuff. But God has nothing escapes His attention. He lets them know that He knows what's going on. He says, I hear your arrogance. And when He gets to a point when they really think that there's something, God's all of a sudden going to declare His name, as He told Him, He says, and I will put my hook in your nose, and I will put my bit in your mouth, and I will make you return by the same road you came. And he goes on to say this in verses 32 through 34. He says, and this is what the Lord says about the king of Assyria. His armies will not enter Jerusalem. He's now 40 miles away. And his plan is to get back there. He's now 40 miles away. And he says, his armies will not enter Jerusalem. They will not even shoot an arrow at it. They will not march outside its gates with their shields or build banks of earth against its walls. The king will return to his own country by the same road on which he came. He will not enter the city, says the Lord. For my own honor and for the sake of my servant David, I will defend this city and protect it. God gives an assurance that He's going to defend Jerusalem. But He's defending Jerusalem. Why? Because He's defending His name. And understand that when the enemy comes against you, he's really making an attack on the name of God, on who God is. And if we would truly begin to approach God, understanding that even though the enemy might be attacking us, but as children of God, he's ultimately attacking God. And if all of a sudden we start to say, Lord, see what the enemy's trying to declare about you? That you don't have the power to deliver me from this sickness? That you don't have the power to get me out of this situation? Do you see what the enemy's trying to do? He's trying to disgrace your name. He's speaking haughty against your name. He's being arrogant against your name. See, you see the difference in the prayer there. Because the bottom line is, if we're His child, we're His. And we can start to say that, understand when someone comes against us, they come against him. And we can say, God, defend your name, defend your honor. And by speaking to God to defend his name, when he steps forward to defend his name and his honor, like I said, then deliverance comes because of that. See, because then the prayer is not about you. And I'm not telling you to be, I'm not encouraging you to be dishonest, I'm not telling you to be dishonest. But understand, really, when you're being attacked as a child of God, who the enemy's really attacking. He's attacking God. He's attacking the power of God. He's attacking the Word of God. Make God, yes, we know God's aware of it. But sometimes you need to vocalize this and let him know, say, God, I understand this too, that, yeah, I might be being attacked, but he's really attacking you. He's really attacking who you are. He's attacking me as being your child. So he can try to bring discredit to your name. So he can say that you're not strong enough to deliver me. But Lord, I know you're the God of all heaven and all earth, and I'm relying on you. I'm looking to you. See, when we truly begin to get our eyes on God of the situation, then God will come down and declare his name and defend his name quickly. Because I want you to listen to what happens. The very next verse in this chapter says, as we read verses 35 and 37, that night, wait a second. So this is one of those Federal Express prayer answers.
I need some of those.
As we know, we said with Hannah, there's times we have to be patient. There are many times we have to be patient. But there are times when God will send a Federal Express answer. And this was one of those times. Because God already declared, he says, he's not going to, his armies aren't going to even reach the outside of this city. I'm not going to allow them to shoot an arrow against it. They're not going to be allowed to set up any type of ramps against it. They're not even going to get near here. They may have taken over Lachish, and because of them destroying that fortification, they figured they were going to take you out, so he decided to exalt himself and start to say some things. But I'm going to show him really who is in control of all of this. So that very night before, so the battle of Lachish is wrapping up, and it says that very night, the angel of the Lord went out to the Assyrian camp, which was about 40 miles away from Jerusalem, and killed 185,000 Assyrian soldiers. Now, first off, when you hear that number, you're like, that's a big army. But that wasn't all the army. God just killed 185,000 because he could have wiped them all out. But I think he sort of left survivors because he wanted them to realize that they're messing with the wrong person. He wanted to send some survivors back to say, we're going to stay out of Israel, Jerusalem, Judah for a while. When the surviving Assyrians woke up the next morning, they found corpses everywhere. Then King Sennacherib of Syria broke camp and returned to his own land. He went home to his capital of Nineveh and stayed there. Now listen to this. One day while he was worshiping in the temple of his god Nisroch, now instead of understanding that the God of Israel, the God of Judah, the God of Hezekiah defended them, and begin to look to God, this God of the Hebrews, as being the one that he should put his trust in, it says he goes and worship at the temple of his God, Nisroch. Now listen to what happens. His sons, Adramelech and Sharezer, killed him with their swords. Two of his sons rose up against him and killed him. They then escaped to the land of Ararat, and another son, I love these names, I've been working on this at home. Ashur-Haddon, became the next king of Assyria. And I just simply said this, can you say, wow? Again, remember I told you, listen to how they're praying and all that stuff, the focus of the prayer, but also understand and look at how God answered the prayer. Again, I know we talk about patience a lot of time with prayer, but I'm here to tell you, I know that there's times where I've had patience with me for prayer, but there's been other times I have received a Federal Express answer. There's been times when all of a sudden, boom, instantly it came, or very rapidly or very quickly it came. God knows the perfect time. God knows what He's doing, and He knows when to have the answer come. But when I read this here, I think it's like, wow, wow, wow. Here, this little kingdom stood up to the known empire of the day, the mightiest empire of the day, and trusted in God. And God delivered. So no matter what you're facing in your life, realize God is bigger than the enemy. God is bigger than the problem. So in closing, Hezekiah experienced God's amazing blessings in answer to his intercession because he did as Hannah and Jehoshaphat did. And also I want to encourage you to do the same thing. And one of the things I told you about, it'll be up on the screen behind me. Pray with all your heart. Pray for the right reasons. Be patient and realize that God may take a while to answer your prayer, or He might, if the time is right, give you a Federal Express answer. Trust God to answer your prayer. Trust God to fight your battle. But also, do what Hezekiah did. Do not despair. Do not panic. Do not give up. Do turn to God in prayer.
Amen.
See, because Hezekiah, he did not despair. He did not panic. He did not give up. But he turned to God in prayer. And I want you to do the same. Understand, it's just, don't let it get you down. Don't let you get into depression. Don't get you into panic. Don't give up. Just turn to God in prayer. Just seek His face. Seek that His name will be glorified in whatever situation you're going through. And let Him know that His name is being attacked because you are His child. You are called by His name. I'm going to have our praise team come up, and I want to have us end our service today in a song that we ended the service with last week, Surrounded. But as they're coming up, I sort of want, this isn't going to be on the screen behind me, but it is what I want you to sort of think about as we close this out. It's sort of a prayer that was in one of my devotions, which went along with this account of Hezekiah. And here's the prayer that was at the end of this section. And I think it's so fitting for what we're dealing with in this, of course, with this story, but also with our kids getting ready to go back to school, with what's going on in our world and society and in our country. I want you to listen to this prayer. It says, Lord, as we look around at the state of our city, our nation, and our world, we need your deliverance. You alone are God over all the kingdoms of the earth. You made heaven and earth. Give ear, O Lord, and hear. Open your eyes, O Lord, and see. Lord, will you pour out your Holy Spirit again? We need a fresh outpouring of the Holy Ghost. We need a fresh outpouring of the Spirit of God, don't we? May we see people seeking your name again. Can I get an amen?
Hallelujah.
May we see miracles of healing. Can I get an amen? May we see the evangelization of our nation. Can I get an amen? May we see the revitalization of the church. Can I get an amen? May we see the transformation of society so that all the kingdoms and people on earth may know that you alone, O Lord, are God. Can I get an amen? Lord, we want your name glorified. We want your name magnified. We want your name made known. Oh, Lord. We look to you. We look to you. I know last week we were talking about Jehoshaphat and how he used praise as the way he went into the temple. Into the battle. Praise is a weapon. Did you hear me? So last week I said again, praise is a weapon. What we need to do, like I said, is get our eyes off our situation and start focusing on God. Just give Him the glory and the praise and say, Lord, defend your name. Defend your name. I said, you can ask Him. Why? Because if we believe in Jesus Christ, we are now called by what we are called by His name. We're called by the name which is above every other name. We are Christ followers. We are Jesus lovers. We are joint heirs with Him. And we can ask our dad, we can ask our Father to defend the family name. And when we ask Him to defend His name, like I said, everything else that's messing with us, it just comes along with being taken care of as He comes down and defends His name. So I want us to praise Him in this place. I want us to recognize who He is and declare that this is how I fight my battles. This is how I fight my battles. It may look like I'm surrounded. Lord, I'm surrounded by you. Will you stand with me this morning? And let's sing this song and just give Him praise in this place today. Will you do that?